So, on to the topic at hand tonight. We're going to be speaking about birding big day 2026 and what it takes to log over 320 birds in a day, which I think Dave will confirm a bit later, but I believe that that is a record for birding big day. Um, and we have a representative from the team who achieved that incredible feat, and we'll be hearing from him a little bit later. But first, formally, welcome to the first episode of the seventh season of Conservation Conversations, hosted right here from Joburg, but streaming live to all around the world, it appears. So thank you so much for joining us. As always, if you want to get in touch with us or just keep abreast of our news here at BirdLife South Africa, you can follow us across all of the major platforms, and you can see the tags there at BirdLife SA for Instagram, BirdLife South Africa. Just search us. Otherwise, get in touch at conversations@birdlife.org.za if you have any questions. You'll be able to find this episode in case you miss anything and all of our past episodes on YouTube. And as you can imagine, the channel is called BirdLife South Africa, so you can find us on YouTube. If you enjoy these webinars and you want to help us keep them going, you can scan the QR code on the screen and make a small donation. Any amount helps, but there are running costs involved. And in order to be able to keep on doing this for the future, we would really appreciate any support that you are able to give us. Thank you very much for all of those of you who have already contributed. So we've got some upcoming episodes that I'm excited to talk about. The next one, hosted by John Kinghorn, who will be familiar to many of you, will be about the Big Year of African Sounds. It's a very exciting initiative, the aim of which is to record as many bird species in South Africa and in fact across Africa as possible. And that'll feed into Cornell's Merlin app, which some of you may know doesn't quite work in South Africa yet. And that's because we have a lack of recordings of these, of our South African birds and African birds in general. So tune in for that if you're interested in that concept. And then 2 weeks after that, we'll have Dr. Carl Lloyd speaking about World Wetlands Day and the importance that wetlands have. And of course, some updates on the status of the white-winged flufftail. And then due to an unforeseen scheduling issue, we don't have anything scheduled for 24th of Feb, but I'm sure that we will have something interesting lined up to tell you about in our next episode. Anyway, on to tonight's show, Season 7, Episode 1, Birding Big Day 2025, and what it takes to break records in terms of the number of bird sightings in 24 hours. To that end, we've got Dr. Dave Ehlers Smith joining us, my colleague, and I believe some of you will have joined us before when Dave has spoken, but for those of you a bit unfamiliar with him, to quote Dave himself, his journey begins deep in the jungles of Indonesian Borneo, but he now finds himself living in Port Edward, where he works as our science and spatial planning project manager. I hope I got that right, Dave. It is a bit of a mouthful. But for tonight's case, the reason that Dave is joining us is because he is the brains and the organizational powerhouse behind Birding Big Day. He has been for the past 2 years, and it has grown significantly under his leadership. So, Dave, we're very excited to hear from you about Birding Big Day, why it matters to conservation, and also if you manage to log any species yourself. So, Dave, without any further ado, one more thing. We have Aaron Extian and Kevin Jolliffe joining us. We'll introduce them formally a bit later. But for now, I just wanted to thank them for joining before we hand over to Dave.
Thank you, Kurt. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy 2026. And I hope this year is going to bring plenty of birds, twitches, and rarities. Very excited this evening to talk about Birding Big Day that happened on the 6th of December. And exceptionally excited to have Aaron Eckstein and Kevin Jolliffe, the winners of the 50-kilometer and the 6-kilometer radius events. I'm going to share a couple of slides just to give a bit of background into what Birding Big Day is. Please, sorry, glasses have to come on for this bit. Please give me the thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, what does it take to log over 320 birds in a day? There's a mind-blowing number of birds. But before we get into that, what is Birding Big Day? So if you're unfamiliar with Birding Big Day, it's essentially a 24-hour bird marathon. So teams will compete to see how many birds they can log in 24 hours. It runs from midnight on the Saturday until midnight on the Sunday. And yeah, teams are rushing around as many different habitats as they can to list as many different species as possible. And this is both from what they can hear and what they can see, visual and auditory. And we have two events for this. We have a 50-kilometer radius event and a 6-kilometer radius event. And what this means is the teams have to compete within the bounds of that 50-kilometer radius if they're doing the large event, or within the 6-kilometer radius if they're doing the smaller event. And obviously, as one might imagine, the 50-kilometer radius, by definition, tends to incorporate more habitats, so therefore more bird species. But you'll see as we go on a little bit later on, the totals from the 6-kilometer radius have been absolutely mind-blowing as well, particularly for this year. Individuals can participate, but it is generally a team event. Rules are relatively few and far between, but we do request that teams stay together, that we don't have teams splitting up and half of the team are covering one part of the radius and the other part of the team are covering another one. And we try and get an agreement for 3/4 of the team on the ID of each bird species. And how does this help for conservation? Okay, it's a lot of fun, but is there conservation value in there? Well, there absolutely is. We have hundreds of teams all over the country simultaneously logging birds. So this gives us a snapshot of species presence or absence, as the case may be, and how their distribution is faring, where the birds are found across the country. We're able to also look at longitudinal trends because Birding Big Day has been going for so long. We're able to look at changes in species distributions over time, perhaps the reporting rate over time, how frequently species are being reported, if they're being reported more frequently or less frequently, whether the ranges are shifting, habitat or distribution, shifts are occurring, or whether the distribution is shrinking or expanding. So it tells us a lot. And because it's taken place at the same time every year, we're able to look at those data across years. Obviously, we're covering a huge amount of habitats as well, so very wide variety of birds. And the 6-kilometer event, which was introduced, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I've been running Birding Big Day for 2 years. Ernst Retief was in the saddle for many years prior to that. I believe I'm correct in saying 5 years ago, the 6-kilometer event was introduced. And this equates to what we call a pentad, which is the grid system. If you've seen me speak before, it's quite often about the Southern African Bird Atlas Project or citizen science in general. And a pentad is the grid system, 5 degrees latitude by 5 degrees longitude, over which the Southern African Bird Atlas Project is stratified. And the Southern African Bird Atlas Project, if you haven't heard me speak before, is one of the world's finest citizen science projects in which people from all over the country are able to log their birds and upload those data into real time so people like me can use data on reporting rates and distributions and trends and all that sort of stuff as well. So the 6-kilometer event equates essentially to a pentad. So you're able to do what we call a full protocol pentad. So you're able to record as many species as possible in an over a 2-hour period, which is what we're looking for, a gold standard to apply the science when we receive these data. The data are captured in BirdLife. I'm sure everybody's familiar with BirdLife, the free to use cell phone app. It's on either Android or iPhone, and the event is run through BirdLife, and this means that the interface is therefore immediately available for feeding these data into SABAP, which is how we get it into conservation. So for Birding Big Day 2025, as Kurt alluded to, we did have some phenomenal things occur. First of all, we had 503 teams. If you think that perhaps the average of a number of team members is 4, this is 2,000 odd individuals birding across the country at once. And in the 50-kilometer event, 675 of our species were recorded in one day. In the 6 kilometer event, this is even more mind-blowing, 581 species were recorded. That equates to 63,575 records of birds recorded across our country in 24 hours. And for my interest's sake, 91,000 Rand was raised by you guys, by the public, by the citizen scientists and the members of the public that participated in Birding Big Day this year. So this is a record-breaking year. So 503 teams is 50 more teams than we ever had before, which is quite remarkable. Last year and the year before, we had 453 teams. So this year we had 50 more teams than ever before. And 91,000 Rand is actually 26,000 Rand more donated than ever before. Last year was the record with 65,000 Rand. So I cannot thank you enough. It makes my job a lot easier. And then another record that was broken is Team Hamerkop, and I'm exceptionally excited to say we've got Aaron of Team Hamerkop with us. They performed a hat trick. They won 3 years in a row, which I believe I'm correct in saying. First of all, I don't think any team has won 3 times. I may stand under correction there, but certainly not 3 times in a row. So that is a record. And then we had the highest number of species ever recorded in the 6 kilometer radius. The 50 kilometer radius, I believe I'm correct in saying the record is 336 species, which was recorded by the eBirders, which is Professor Derek Engelbrecht and his team back in, I think, 2021. So that's actually the record number of species, but in terms of the teams, the records were broken with the teams this year. This year this year it's 2026, isn't it? It's January. Last year, 2025, we were exceptionally fortunate to partner up with Return Africa, which is one of South Africa's premier wildlife tourism and birding outfits. They are situated in a number of places, but they have this incredible camp in Pafuri, really luxury safari tents in the Pafuri section of Kruger National Park. And they very generously sponsored both support from my position and an incredible lucky draw grand prize of 4 nights for 4 people to go stay at their luxury accommodation, which was worth 64,000 Rand. So one of our lucky participants was the winner of this grand prize, and she will keep us posted of how that goes when she goes and takes up the prize. So if you were following along on the day, or perhaps you had a look afterwards, or maybe you've never seen this before, but this is the interface on BirdLasser, and you're able to see. This is quite exciting as the day goes on. You're able to see the tallies and totals of the teams as they're competing. So as you can see here, Team Hamerkop with 322 species. You can see where they were situated in the Mbombela region of Mpumalanga, with Vatkaikye 306 species just behind them, and the Belly Nightjars 304. So it's a fun way you can toggle with these little buttons here to see who's recording where, what they've recorded. You can click on, see what species they've recorded, and this updates through BirdLasser in real time. So this was the dashboard for the 50 kilometer event. And you can see here for the 6 kilometer event, as I mentioned, sorry, glasses back on for this, 234 species for 2 teams. It was tied for the first place. The Wild Tomorrow Watchers and the Bosveld Larksmanner both recorded 234 species in 6 kilometers in 24 hours, which I think is absolutely remarkable. So it was very, very competitive there. The red-billed Rocket Tails coming in third there, they actually won in 2024. So also a very competitive event, but some absolutely remarkable numbers coming out for such a small area. And as I mentioned, incredibly invaluable for us for conservation. So that's an overview from me. And it's my absolute pleasure now to invite Aaron Eckstein and Kevin Jolliffe of Hamerkop and Wild Tomorrow Watchers, respectively, to tell you how on earth they did this. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dave, and welcome to Kevin and Eden. It's great to have you two with us. It
Thank
was
you.
quite a remarkable day out you had.
Thank you.
So we're excited to learn a bit more about how that went for you guys. But just before I ask you any questions, I wanted to just give a shout out to Dave. He is an incredible birder himself. And in fact, we've got an internal big year at BirdLife South Africa that we also run on BirdLasser. And Dave won it by a pretty phenomenal margin and ended the year on, Dave, how many species?
599,
I think that's quite a
which has
stunning,
more
stunning.
romance than 600, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. It leaves some anticipation for this year to see if you'll crack 600. But I bring that up, Dave, not to embarrass you, but actually to then ask how many birds you managed to log on Birding Big Day.
36, I think. I was behind the laptop all day, so it was whatever was from my balcony. I think, yeah, if I got to 50, it was a lot.
Yeah.
I did compete in 2023 in the 6 kilometer radius before I started working at BirdLife, and we did it in Port Edward, and we got 150 species in Port Edward. So I was quite happy with that. That's my one and only attempt at birding big day.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the sacrifice demands that you have to bird from your laptop. So thanks for all of us, because I also participated. Thanks from all of us for the work you do behind the scenes to facilitate such a fun day. Speaking of the fun day,
Yeah.
let's move over to Ellen and Kevin. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm actually going to share my screen because I've got pictures of each of your teams. So, Kevin, if you could let us know who we are looking at here.
Yeah, so that's Kyron on the left. Um, he's the son of the owner of Betchan Nature Training close by. And then myself, and then Oliver Pritchett, who was a volunteer at the time up at the reserve that I'm managing, and then Vainant that was helping out one of the students at Betchan Nature Training. So he's probably the least experienced and clocked the most lifers for the day.
That's very impressive. It's great to see such a talented group of young birders. I think birders in general can be a bit worried about the future of the pursuit and of the amount of younger people that are interested in nature and conservation in general. But I think it's very clear that the future generations are in very good hands. So well done to you for taking out a crew of younger guys. And moving on to Eden's Team Hammerkop. Who have we got here joining you, Eden?
All right, good evening, everyone. Yes, there on the main photograph there, that's my brother Johan Eksteen on the far left. Then it's me, Aaron Eksteen, then Duncan McKenzie and Lawrence Grobler on the right.
And you guys have won this competition 3 years in a row now.
Yes, now 3 years in a row. We will still keep on trying in future because we would still want that record, but we're still not there yet.
Mm. And is it a case of, if it's not broken, don't fix it? Do you do the same routes each year?
Well, we've been chopping and changing where we start and where we finish, but it's mostly the area from Bergendal in the Kruger Park to Malalaan, Barberton area, and Komatipoort area.
It must be a long day on the road, right? When do you start? Midnight?
Yes, we usually start at midnight and do some birding in camp, and soon thereafter start an very early morning night drive in the Kruger.
You have to get some kind of special permission for that.
Yes, we do. We book through the normal ways, but then we ask the guy doing it a favor to start 2 hours earlier than normal.
Okay, so they say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think in this case, getting permission to drive that early start must make quite the difference.
Well, it's probably the highlight every year to see almost all the owls and nightjars is always very special, as well as finding white-backed night here and there at the Malalaan Bridge.
Wow. Sounds like a great day out. So you start in Kruger, and then where does the rest of the day take you?
So I'm sure you've been watching the route, but because since we have BirdLife, the route is available for everyone to see. But yes, from Bergendal area, we moved to the Malalaan area, and it's amazing when you move out of the Kruger Park into the farm areas, which is 1 kilometer away from the Kruger Park. You immediately get a spike in the species that you find. And because the habitat is farm and dams around the farms and open urban areas. And from there, we moved to a place called Serenity Mountain and Forest Lodge, where we do our initial forest birding, and they have good forest, and it's surprisingly close to Malalaan. It's about 20 minutes drive from Malalaan to get to Serenity, and you have good forest there. We, for example, target dark-backed weaver, lemon dove, blue-mantled crested flycatcher, and the likes. Yeah. So we had a chance to finding a half-collared kingfisher. Didn't find it this year, but no, we did hear it. We couldn't see it, but we did hear it. We also found pygmy kingfisher, black-bellied starling. That's where we get it. You have a good chance for crowned eagle. We got crowned eagle there, so it's a really nice forest birding.
Hmm. I hope that everybody's taking notes. I know I certainly am. We'll definitely add Serenity Forest Lodge to my places that I need to visit in the next year because I want to try beat Dave. I think I'll need a lot
Okay.
of luck and a lot of help from people like you.
Okay.
Um, so Adam,
Uh,
you've been doing this, you let me know, since you were 12 years old. You've been participating in Birding Big Day in some form or another.
Yes, so I think it's a probably a nice annual event, so we all look forward to it. So my brother and I and Lawrence, we've been doing it since high school years together, and then Duncan McKenzie joined us 13 years ago. So he's been doing 13 years in a row with us now.
Oh, that's impressive, eh? What dedication. I'm sure you guys have gotten very close over the years and lots of shared lifers and great experiences.
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, for example, just after the year 2000, I think it was in 2001 or two, those were the years when the tally came close to 300. So the race was to get to 300. And in Fancy Peacock in his book, in his one book, I think it's in Birding Gauteng, they do write about that they were the first team to reach 300. I think they reached 301, and that year we were second with 299. So at least that's proof that we are very honest and accurate.
Yeah. Very competitive, and I'm sure, there was at least one of you in the group who was saying, sure, I heard but well done for keeping it honest. Kevin,
Yeah.
over to you. How many years have you been doing this? Is this one of the first times, or are you quite experienced in the Birding Big Day scene?
Yeah, so I did quite a few when I was in high school. I think we came third one year in the schools groups when I was at Maritzburg College, and then we won it the following year. Uh, and then just based out of Maritzburg just to see how many we could get in and around Maritzburg. I'm not one of those that likes to travel far to do birding big day. I like to prove that you can get good numbers of birds in and around where you stay. Um, and then, I was out and about for a while overseas, so kind of picked it up in the last 5 years again, which has been quite fun. And I'm very fortunate to live in a birding hotspot here in the middle of Zululand. Um, so we kind of spoiled for choice, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But it's always good. It's more of a competition with myself and my skills than anything else, just to make sure I'm not getting rusty. Um, and I think it shows in the end, what you can get out of 6Ks.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And the idea of not keeping rusty, I think some birders will do it as their sort of their race day in a way, whereas others will do it for the first time in their lives and maybe not achieve quite the same numbers. But the cool thing is that it's all valuable because any of the data that is created on this day is very useful, as Dave explained, in understanding trends and population levels. In fact, I did my first birding big day in 2025. We did the 50K radius, and I was very embarrassed when on a flooded Crake Road in Drift, I ran into the young wildlife photographers team. They were doing the 6K radius, and they'd seen about 50 more birds than we had. So it just goes to show that there's a steep learning curve, but hopefully next year, or this year, I should say, will be a bit more productive. Kevin, you said you were lucky to find yourself in Zululand. I'm sure there's a large amount of you that agitated towards finding a way of living in Zululand rather than just happening to end up there. What do you do there in Zululand?
So I'm the reserve manager for a US based conservation NGO, and yeah, so I manage the goings on the reserve itself, the security and maintenance, conservation, and monitoring and what have you on the ground here. It's a key reserve. It's not really big, but it has incredible biodiversity. And we border onto the Pinda Munyawana Conservancy, and then we also have a corridor section that runs down the Sipakaya River that runs into the top of False Bay Park, and so we have property that can potentially link Isimangaliso with Pinda, and there's a number of other large private reserves that can all be linked together eventually to create these sort of conservation corridors. So it's a worthwhile project, and I'm glad to be part of the team to try and make this happen.
Does sound like an incredible project, and I hope we see corridors like that across South Africa in the coming years. It'll be such an incredible boon to biodiversity across the country. So thanks for the work you do there, Kevin. Just to point out that Wild Tomorrow Watchers, your team, you get that name from the NGO you work for, right? Wild Tomorrow.
That's correct, yes.
Right. And you must know that reserve intimately. I mean, it's part of your job. So I assume you spent your entire day in the familiar haunts on the reserve itself, or did you venture beyond it?
No, we try and stick to all the reserve property as far as possible, as well as neighboring properties that we do have access to, or roads through some of the farmland between the different gates. But where possible, we try and stick to everything on the reserve itself. So it's a testament to the biodiversity that we have. But it certainly tests your skills and your recognition of calls to the limit at the end.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in 6Ks to see 234 birds is a really stunning achievement. What were some of the birds you're most proud of seeing on that day, or ones that got away, maybe? Or, tell us a bit about how your day went.
So to start with, we're quite spoiled because of the northern section of False Bay, where where the property sort of links up. We've got all those mud flats that everybody refers to as Nibela, where all the rarities and things pop up. So we were lucky enough to get a pectoral sandpiper and yellow wagtail there, but luckily there was a bunch of other vehicles there and teams working the area, so we could just pick up on what they had seen to save a bit of time. So those were good ticks. And then we didn't really do much of a recce beforehand to try and see what we were going to find, other than going down to the lake edge. And we had a little patch of newly acquired sand forest that I hadn't really explored much. And so we stopped off there at first light and had a number of broadbilled African broadbills that were calling, which I suspected they would be there, but we needed some sort of confirmation. Otherwise, it would be quite a mission to chase them down in other areas. So we were very, very lucky to have them calling there. And yeah, so then, in the bush you've got so many species, so it was actually quite tough to keep up in the morning chorus, logging the birds while everybody's shouting them out to you at the same time, and then having to go through afterwards and confirm, did you say this, did you say it? But yeah, I think the pectoral sandpiper sort of stands out in the yellow wagtail, which was good. We got streaky-headed seed eater, which is quite an unusual bird for us in summer, no less, and we had a pair of those. We pick them up occasionally in winter, but it's an unusual bird for this area. So those were a couple of surprises, but I'm trying to think what we dipped on at the end. It was an interesting day. It was kind of drizzling on and off, so we really had to, challenge ourselves to pick out what we were after. But
No, I'm
yeah,
sure. I'm sure
I'm
it's
struggling to
very
pick out.
challenging. But at least these days we have tools like BirdLife, so I'm sure that makes it far easier. I had a brief chat with Aaron earlier today, and he was letting me know that back in the day they had to use a bit of a formula and draw out a pentad, in pencil on a 1 to 50,000 map, uh, and log on a notepad. Because I mean, BirdLife only arrived around 2013, from what I know. So what was it like back in the day, and when you were 12 years old, Ed, and what were the experiences? It must have been completely different.
Thanks for the question, Kurt. Yes, definitely used a pencil and a list, and you had to actually, some teams I remember were using a scribe, someone who's physically sitting and logging, not actually part of the team, but just making notes and ticking birds to keep up. As I remember it, we definitely used these 1 to 50,000 maps, and we used mathematical tools and to exactly draw the 50-kilometer radius. So, and now we've moved to technology where you can, in live, you can follow us live and see exactly which bird we see where, which is not always a good thing, but it makes it more a real-time thing. So I like it the way that it's moved to a very interesting event, and we've always been taking part for some reasons for ourselves, enjoying it, and also that we realize the amount of people that you reach with such an event is good advertisement to train more people to enjoy the specific habitats that needs protection.
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure it's taken you a lot of work over the years to try and find this optimal route that you guys have found. And perhaps, you wonder or you worry if you've blown up these spots and you're going to find, 20 cars there next year. But I think it's all, as long as it's all in service of conservation and service of this hobby that we all love of birding, I'm sure
Yes,
it's,
yeah. With regards to the specific spots of sensitive birds, we sometimes do log like at the entrance of the private property, because you can't log a bird exactly at someone's doorstep if it's a private area.
yeah, yeah, fair enough. That sounds like a good way around those restrictions. Last thing you want is a landowner phoning you wondering why there's, 20 birds driving up and down his private roads. But speaking of, Kevin, is your lodge one which is accessible to the public? Do you have accommodation? What does it look like if someone were to visit your spots?
So currently it's kind of strictly for conservation and restoration work. We do have a couple of chalets that we're busy refurbishing at the moment. So in the future there may well be accommodation, but it'll be more word of mouth, and if we can say restricted to nature lovers and birders or what have you. And then we can also offer game drives or guided walks or what have you in the future. But that's still in the pipeline. It's on a newly acquired portion of land, so there's quite a lot of work to be done. But as soon as it's up and running, I'm sure it'll be spread around. Those that know will know. And it's already quite popular with some of the guys. We had guys scouting for Birding Big Day that stayed over, but it's not advertised at the moment.
All right.
It's certainly in a prime location, for future.
No, it's an exciting prospect, and we hope that you get some accommodation up and running soon because that'll be a great income. And the more people that know about these places, the better. In the sense that it's that much easier to find a sense of attachment and wanting to protect these kinds of precious places. So we've got a few questions that I want to get to from our guests. Either of you can answer, or you can both answer. But the first up is from Warren Funston, who asks, of the birds that you log on the day, what are the ratio of birds that you've heard versus birds that you've seen?
If I go, I would say with us in the thick bush, close to 70 to 80% are herd. And the only ones we sort of chased down were the ones that a Wynand hadn't seen. So he needed them to tick them as a lifer. But yeah, it's quite a high percentage.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd say the majority of birding that I've done is as you sort of get on in terms of your skills of call recognition. A lot of it is all about the ear. Even if you still go and find the bird, you definitely are alerted to it by the call. Eden, would you agree? Based on the various places you went, I imagine it was also primarily based on calls.
Definitely. I mean, it's also what makes it quicker because you don't need to spend that much of time at a specific spot to get all the birds that you are targeting. We will never get all the birds, but that's why we tend to, by habitat, try to batch it into a short list of our specific target birds. And if we reach 80% more or less of that batch, we sort of think of moving on. So that makes you stay on your schedule. If you try to get all the birds, you will run out of time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you guys have laid this out almost like it's a sport at this point, which I suppose it is, super competitive it can be. Um, Dave, I'm going to invite you back for a sec because I've got a comment here from a Christo Fenter who's speaking about a handicap system in terms of areas that have a low birding count. So, you can think of parts of the Northern Cape or something that are equally valuable to have data there and perhaps not quite as attractive to people looking to break records. So, in this year's, or at least 2025's results, what it results from, traditionally not very highly, areas of low species diversity. What did the results look like from those areas?
So
And
I
how can
guess
we?
kind of a handicap system is the provincial challenge. So we have, in addition to the 50 kilometer and the 6 kilometer radius challenge, we have the provincial challenge as well, which is mostly open to the 50 kilometer radius. But if a team is feeling extra competitive or very, confident, they can request to be added to the provincial challenge as well from the 6 kilometer event. And basically, that's kind of weighted by what you're likely to find within that province. So the Northern Cape obviously is going to have fewer species than Mpumalanga or Limpopo or KwaZulu-Natal, for example. So yeah, I think that's the best way to kind of still maintain that competitive edge and also certainly encourage people to record data across the length and breadth of the country and all the different habitats therein is to keep in mind the provincial challenge and the numbers that you can get within that within that bound relative to what is actually available in your area.
Hmm. Perhaps in future we can introduce a category along the lines of pentads that don't have many full protocol cards submitted, for example, and you can encourage people to try and get out to those areas that, yeah, historically don't get much attention.
Kurt, you're absolutely speaking my language here, and this is exactly what we try and do when I mean, Birding Big Day is one of the things. We also have Atlas bashes and those kind of things that target areas where there's very low coverage. So perhaps that's something we can discuss. We'll take the Saw Flying, Kurt, and have a conversation for next year about maybe trying to incentivize people to go looking for pentas that haven't been um, very well covered or covered at all. While I've got my camera on, may I ask a question?
Go for it.
Aaron, I'm interested. So, as a conservationist, um, you guys have been doing this route for many, many years. And from a conservation point of view, obviously, we hear about climate change, we hear about land use change, all these kind of things. You've been doing this same route, over 100 kilometers in what perhaps was prime bushveld for many years. Have you seen a lot of changes in your region? Does it mean you've had to change your route? Are there species that have dropped out of the system that you used to see previously that you no longer see because of, potential conservation challenges? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that for us with such a long period of time that you've been doing this in one region?
Thank you, David, for that question. I think it's a very important topic because, yeah, so to start with, I can tell you for certain that the game birds, we struggled the past few years to get game birds. I mean, 20 years ago, finding a Coqui francolin or a Sherry's francolin was much easier than nowadays, and that has to do with grassland and urbanization, I would suppose, because I remember very well finding Shelley's francolin around the town of Barberton many years in a row, and we haven't had them around that same areas now for like 10 years. The same with and it's also grassland birds, probably like broad-tailed warbler. I think its name had changed. I think it's now a type of a grass bird. But a broad-tailed warbler also used to be more common in the grasslands around Barberton.
Oh. So has that meant that you've had to adjust your routes to try and pick up species that you would have expected to see in previous years, or how have you dealt with that?
We haven't had to adjust because of specific birds not being found, because we still do that same areas, but we just don't find those birds. But there has been one or two game farms that had been land claimed and successfully land claimed, and then we don't have access to those farms anymore.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay.
I think
Thanks,
that
Dave. Great question.
conservation aspects and the landscape change and potential climate change is as I mentioned, this data set is beautiful because it's been going for 41 years, and we're able to compare longitudinally what happens. SABAP's been going since 2007, so to have people like you as well that have been doing these routes for so long, you're able to document this in real time and understand the changes that you're seeing and attribute these changes in the landscape to the changes in the birds that you're seeing as well. So, yeah, it's very, very valuable. Thanks.
Kevin, with the youngsters that joined you on your day out, do you have any advice for perhaps parents or family that are watching on how to get their kids, their youngsters involved in birding and just in general, attracting people to birding, anyone who might be a beginner or might be struggling to know where to start? What are your thoughts on that?
I think if they have access to binoculars and a bird book as a start, and if there's a bird club or a green space or something close by, depending on where they live, that's always a good spot if they can go and see what they can find there. But having somebody that'll take them under their wing is the best, and teach them sort of the nuances about what to look for in habitat and to listen for the birds and to sort of recognize matching the call with the bird is quite important. Um, I was lucky that, my parents are nature lovers, so we used to go to game reserves quite often. And then, if there's no animals to see, there's always birds to see. So it's a way of sort of keeping yourself busy, but it tests you at the same time in your skills. So I would encourage any kids that are interested in nature and in birds in particular, if you can get a bird book. I say a bird book and not an app because, if you're paging through the book, I generally tend to recognize the images in the book rather than using an app. An app is great for confirming what you've seen, but the book is great if that makes sense. Yeah, and that's how I started. I was given a bird book when I was 7 and a pair of binoculars, and off I went. And in most cases, sort of self-taught with all the local regional birds, and then needed somebody to help out with some of the more sort of technical things. But luckily, the extended family are also nature lovers, so that helped a lot.
Yeah, that is always going to be helpful. Unfortunately, there are, those among us who really suffer from the fact that no one in their family is a birder. Luckily, I wasn't one of those, but there's some people that have that horrible affliction affecting them. So for those, I'm going to send a link in the chat shortly, but I would recommend joining a bird club. We have bird clubs throughout the country, and they're always eager to have new members and to share their knowledge. So I would also recommend joining a club if you don't have anybody else that you know that can help you become a birder. And I assume, given that you started when you were 12 years old, that you had some direct family who helped you along your birding journey when you began.
Yes, my father did take us to the Lowveld Bird Club. I grew up in Nelspruit, and my brother Johan and I uh, quickly found this a very interesting hobby. He took us to nice places, and obviously there were certain people that were inspiring us. For example, we did the Olifants hiking trail, the Kruger Park one in 1989, and Don English was the leader, the hiking leader, and he inspired us, I think, to do birding in a better way because he knew his bird calls, and then we also wanted to know our bird calls. And then in the Lowveld Bird Club, I think mainly it was the late Duncan Christie and Karen Bullen who inspired us.
Some incredible people out there that have dedicated their lives to, creating knowledge and sharing knowledge around birds. And I think now is a good time to just thank those people in general, because without that community, there'd be far fewer birders. So thanks to all of those people who've shared their knowledge over the years. And a great way to get in touch with people like that, as I mentioned, is to join a bird club. Dave, I see you've got a question.
Yeah, I've got two questions. Kevin, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek question, but sort of sort of serious. Now, you've put the fact that at your reserve you can get 230 species in 6 kilometers in a day. I assume you've employed a marketing manager and are busy building huts for all the tourists that are going to come and stay. Because I mean, it's tongue-in-cheek, but as a fellow KZN boy, it's known that Magnani and a couple of these spots like that are exceptional, but 230 in a day is just remarkable. So you're really sitting on some prime real estate there. So yeah, it's wonderful to see the work you're doing. And the main question I wanted to ask, so for both of you, I'd like to hear like how you go about prepping to do your day, whether you do recce's and you all that sort of stuff. Because I'm interested. I think a lot of people like the idea of the 50 kilometer, but maybe they are a little sort of daunted by the fact that it seems like such a long way. 6 kilometer is perhaps a little more friendly, particularly if you're familiar with the patch, etc. So it'd be interesting to hear like both of you. How your prep journey goes, what goes into getting such enormous numbers, and any advice for people that want to try and break 300 or 250, perhaps in a six kilometer radius. Perhaps Kevin, if you go first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks. I think for us being trying to concentrate on the reserve, it's sort of intimate knowledge of what's on the reserve itself. So we kind of did it in an ad hoc way, if that makes sense. We kind of get a sense of what we're going to figure out and what we're going to find. Where the main recce we did was down onto the lake edge, just to see what the amount of effort it would take to get down, and what we would, what sort of species we'd pick up. We did that a couple of days beforehand, and the rest you kind of get a sense of what you're going to pick up in the different areas on the reserve itself. So I think if I was going to a new area, it would be much more of a detailed recce into what we would need to do. But we also had sort of backup plans. If we didn't pick up certain species in certain areas, we'd have to sort of move on to another one where we knew we could sort of pick it up. So luckily, we didn't really have to, resort to any of the sort of backup plans, which is good. But I think Aaron's 50K challenge is a lot more in depth, with the diversity of habitats that he's having to cover.
So, Kevin, I think what I'm hearing from you is familiarity is absolute key. And the one year I did Port Edwards, it's my home patch, so again, I knew where to go, kind of thing. So I think that's yeah, it's and I guess Aaron, then you just do that at a larger scale. You're familiar, but within 100 kilometers rather than 12 kilometers.
Well,
What does it look like for Team Hammercock?
yeah, I think the 50-kilometer radius, you definitely have to know your traveling times much better and the exact spots. You don't have, I think the 6 kilometer, I might be wrong, but you will have more walking time and listening time, whereas with a 50-kilometer route, you have to actually travel and get somewhere. So you have to know the traveling times, and then when you get into the next habitat, you have to know where you're going to make your actual stop. Because, for example, if you visit a forest that you have to know within that forest, is it better to stop at the edge or on the other side? So that type of information you have to gather before the day. And obviously, you have to stay safe. I think that has also to do with the 6 kilometer radius, but staying safe with regards to road safety, I think is more important for the 50-kilometer radius. You cannot stop at night on the highway. You should avoid certain urban areas where you cannot like stop and bird. And that's why I think we are privileged to have done it so many times, and we don't have to change our route much. Actually, now it depends more on the weather.
And a bad weather day, can that throw everything out completely, or
Yes, especially wind.
wind? Yeah. For being able to both hear the birds and birds just don't move.
Yeah, my opinion is that a little bit of rain can the birds can bounce back, you catch up, but wind tends to come with like a cold front or something, and it tends to affect the whole day.
Yeah. Thank you. Very interesting. And I think I heard from Duncan as well. You guys also have a. Do you have a driver, or you have a change in vehicle with a fresh fuel tank? Is that correct?
And that is yes, what we do. We feel it's safer to have a driver for the night where you get tired. It's not good to drive on the highway if you're that tired.
This episode is sponsored by Sunrail, so thanks for clearing. 100%.
Arrive alive. I can't believe how tactical you guys get, but it just goes to show, to put up those kinds of numbers, you have to really put in the effort beforehand as well. So we're going to start winding down, but we do still have a few questions outstanding. One is from Faisal Mamdu, who asks, are there any experts that can be joined in the Western Cape? Faisal, I'd recommend Googling the Cape Bird Club and joining them or getting in contact with them, as you'll meet many experts and many skilled birders there that'll help you get on and hopefully get some really great sightings on Birding Big Day, and also just a great part of the birding community. Faisal also asked when the next Birding Big Day is. I see Dave's just turned his camera off, so I think I'll answer in his stead. He can chip in, but I believe it'll be pretty much the same time as it was this year, so early December in 2026. Have you set an exact date yet,
First
Dave?
Saturday of December. Yeah, it's going to be the 5th of December. So the first Saturday of December. Um,
All right.
so yeah, uh,
First Saturday of
seems to
December.
be the most popular with closing of schools and for families and all that kind of thing. So migrants, a lot of the migrants are back, so it's just good timing overall.
Yeah, definitely a good time of year. We've got another question about from Marty Jasper. How many birds do you see on their nests? I'm sure you must be seeing lots of breeding birds, lots of chicks, lots of fledglings, that kind of thing.
Well, from our side, we don't necessarily target birds on the nest, but we do have an area, for example, near Bergendal, where we know the white-crowned shrikes breed in the more or less the same knobthorn trees every year. And when we drive past it, we would look if it's breeding again. And I mean, you can even then find it at night sitting on its nest.
Oh, it's lovely becoming so intimate with the birding site that you start to even be able to track the development of families and chicks and fledglings and how their breeding success is going. I've been seeing lots of photos on Facebook this year about people recording how the swallows that are nesting in their verandas are doing, and unfortunately, we have none of our own. So I enjoy seeing those pics. Um, Dave, this is to you. We have a comment from Penny Abbott who really enjoyed the WhatsApp group interactions during the year. There was a Birding Big Day WhatsApp group on which everyone was sharing their experiences. I'm sure the Kevins and the Aarons of the world were maybe a bit too busy to be posting on WhatsApp, but do you think, Dave, that more of this kind of thing is successful in spreading the word about birding and getting more people out there actively birding?
The WhatsApp group specifically. Um,
Just in general, fun
yeah, I
events like
mean
this.
the Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, what a fantastic way to showcase our diversity, you know. In one day you can see 300 species, and that forces you, well, not forces you, but necessitates you to go and check out as many different habitats as possible. So you're being inspired the whole time. Look at this beautiful forest. Wow, there's a waterfall at the end of that river, you know. So I think, yeah, things like this are absolutely fantastic for um, getting people into the event as well. And I think it can also be a bit daunting. I can say for my wife, the one and only Birding Big Day, she did, you know, sort of 3 a.m. starting and then to 9 p.m. and she was a little bit like never again. So it depends on your level of enthusiasm, but you don't have to do 24 hours. You can do 6 hours, you can do 4 hours, you can do a 2 hour full protocol pentad card and submit it on the day. You know, all of these things you can go
Mm.
at your own pace, 100%. But I think it's a fantastic showcase for the hobby, and it allows people to segue from the hobby into the science and into the conservation, and that's for me that coalface, that interface is very important as well. So yeah, events like this I think are absolutely key for promoting not only you know the beauty of the wild spaces and the incredible beauty of our birds and the incredible diversity of our birds, but also the importance of keeping them wild and keeping the birds and their numbers and being able to track their numbers, you know. So yeah, I absolutely do think days like these are fantastic.
Mm. Great, Dave. And thank you so much for all your efforts in organizing it and facilitating it for the rest of us. It's hugely appreciated. And I just wanted to make
Thank
one
you.
point in closing about, of course, we've been talking tactics and we're talking birding for 30 years and, seeing hundreds of birds in a day. I just wanted to point out that for those of you who might still be beginners, firstly, well done for being here on a Tuesday evening, watching a webinar about Birding Big Day. That's a good sign. It means we've got you hooked and we'll be seeing you posting big numbers soon. But, as much as it is a great achievement and something to be proud of to be seeing these record numbers of birds, any birds seen in the day are an achievement. You know, I know people choose to do their big day from their garden or from their local park. And, you know, of course, that means you're not going to be seeing hundreds of birds, but it still counts. And as long as you're out there enjoying birding, enjoying watching birds, I think that's a win. So, not to be too trite, but as long as you're looking at birds and appreciating them, you're a winner. So, Erin, Kevin, thank you very much for joining us, sharing your expertise. It's been wonderful to learn from you. And we look forward to the 5th of December and seeing what you're able to achieve this coming year.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Kurt. Congrats again, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and it'll be a good challenge for yeah later in the year. We're considering whether we do 50K again or see if we can beat our record on the 6K. But we'll be watching you closely, Aaron.
Thanks.
Kevin, I think you must do the 6K again. I mean, who knows what you could find next time? 230, 240, 250 beckons.
Yeah, when we don't
Thank you,
have to dip
gentlemen, for joining us.
when you don't dip on the European rollers that all turned out the next day.
That's always the way.
That
No,
happens.
from
That's how it
myself,
goes.
thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear from the top teams of both categories. Yeah, and we look forward to seeing what you can do next year.
Thank you again.
Thanks very much, and
Bye-bye.
thanks to everyone who joined. If you'll stick around for a sec, Dave does have one more thing to share, and it's for those of you who perhaps didn't get your fix on birding big day. So, Dave, take it away. You're not quite ready yet, are you, Dave?
Forgot about this bit, and now my computer's gone into no mode. Excuse me a moment. All right, just let me. Sorry.
All right. Well, while Dave is busy finding that, why don't you, who are still watching, show by by thumbs up or hands clapped how many of you participated in Birding Big Day yourselves? Yeah, seeing plenty come up. Yeah, I had a great day out myself. I really look forward to the next one. And maybe if Dave can be convinced, we can actually do monthly ones. How does that sound, Dave?
Like I'm looking for a new job.
Thought you might say something like
Once a
that.
year is fine, thank you.
So tell us
Can you
about
see
what
my
you.
screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Tell us what we've got
Fabulous.
there.
Okay, guys. So for the atlases amongst us, I alluded to it earlier. An atlas bash is where we try and target as many low coverage pentads, so pentads that have received very little or no surveys in the SABAP, the Southern African Bird Atlas Project. And Lesotho is, on the whole, very under surveyed. So we have a partnership between BirdLife South Africa and the Lesotho Highland Development Authority to do an Atlas Bash. We've been doing this for a number of years now. I participated last year, and between the 6th and the 9th of February, so next month, in the Mokotlong Katse region, we will be doing another Atlas Bash again. So this beautiful picture here by Albert Froneman of the mountain pipit is one of the endemics you might see. So if you are keen to get involved from the South African side, you can email me. My email address is here on the screen, or if you want to, if you're joining us from Lesotho, you want to get involved from the Lesotho side, you can email Rafilwe here at LHDA. So please do consider pentads or low coverage pentads in Lesotho. See yourself some Drakensberg rock jumpers, Drakensberg siskins, ground woodpeckers, mountain pipits. We would very much appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. That sounds like a very exciting prospect. If anybody didn't manage to get Dave's email, just email info@birdlife.org.za or conversations@birdlife.org.za, and we'll put you in touch with Dave if you're keen to join. And one other point raised by Tanya Anderson is if you did keep an Atlas list during Birding Big Day and you haven't actually submitted it to SABAP yet, just make sure you follow the instructions to submit it from BirdLife. Otherwise, I don't think we get access to it. Is that right, Dave?
Correct. Yes. You have to go one step further to be able to submit to SABAP, but there is a lot of, it's a scientific protocol. There's a lot of conditions that need to be met for it to be able to be submitted to SABAP as a full protocol card. But if you just have a list of birds that you've seen, you can, and you don't adhere to register first with SABAP, link it to your BirdLife, and then you can send your records to SABAP. And we would very much appreciate them. And thanks for the comment, Tanya.
All right. Right. Thank you, everybody. And just to point out that Birding Big Day will be sponsored by Return Africa again next year, and we're very excited to have them as hosts, and we look forward to whatever the lucky draw prize is next year. But for now, that's all from us. Thanks very much, Dave. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Eden, for joining us this evening. And thank you, of course, to our incredible audience. We really appreciate you joining, and we hope you have a fantastic week further, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. All right. That's all for now.
And to everybody that's donated as well, thank you enormously from me. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.